I feel like I need to start off this video by saying, and hopefully saying it with a straight face, emissions equipment is important for your vehicle. I'm not telling you that you should go remove emissions equipment from your vehicle, but depending on what state you're in and your emissions requirements, this video could help you. As you saw by the title of this video, we're going to be talking about our EVAP system today. As far as I know, on the 06 to 07 GD chassis with the EJ25 motor. We're going to be talking about this guy right here, this solenoid and the one right below it. The main purpose of that EVAP solenoid, it takes the fumes from your charcoal canister in the rear of your car, brings it back up and pretty much burns off whatever vapors or smells back into the intake so that you reduce emissions. This car is pretty much emission free, minus the charcoal canister, the EVAP solenoid, and it does still have a catted downpipe, mainly because I don't want to stink up my garage with the smell of unburnt fuel coming out of my tailpipe. Before we get this off, I'll show you where all of these lines run, because I know that was a huge question that I had when building this motor, is where do these lines go if you're going to maintain this, or if you're in a state that requires you to keep emissions in an EVAP system. But basically how this whole system works is there's your fuel lines, one's a feed, one's a return, and one is a vent line from the gas tank. So how it's set up on a GD chassis is black on the bottom is feed, the middle blue is your vent for your EVAP system, and your yellow is your return line. So that blue line comes all the way out here from this soft line, and it connects to the factory hard line under the manifold. I believe I still have the factory hard line, so when I get this off, I'll set it up and I'll show you how everything works and how I figured it out from the forums. So it comes from the soft line under the intake manifold and gets fed into the bottom solenoid. So I'll just show you here so you can see exactly how everything is ran. So on the top solenoid, the bottom port goes up to your intake. The top port on the top solenoid goes to your T. Attached to that T is the soft line that connects to the factory hard line. Let's get this alternator cover off so we can have a better look at what's going on right here, so we can see exactly where all the lines go. This is a very complicated looking system, but in reality it is very simple. Alright, so here's an exact routing. So top port on the top solenoid is going to connect down to this T right here. This T is your vent line from your gas tank, so this line comes from the middle hard line on the factory location. Bottom port of the T goes down to the bottom solenoid, and then bottom port on the top solenoid goes to your intake. And then the top port on the bottom solenoid goes to your intake manifold right here. So, very complicated looking system, but really there's only 4 locations where things have to plug in. And given the fact that it just looks like a rat's nest of vacuum lines, and all those can become potential vacuum leaks, and then you're chasing down trying to figure out what goes where. So if you do need to keep this on your vehicle for whatever state you're in, I hope that helped you out with the routing of this all. But let's get this taken off of mine, and we're going to plug up the 2 vacuum spots that need to be plugged up, which is going to be this one off of your intake manifold, and then this one coming off of your actual intake. And then we're going to vent that one from the gas tank to atmosphere. I'm going to run it down into the fender well somewhere, just so it's out of sight and we don't have any smell in the cabin. Given that I live in the state of Florida, where we don't really have any emission laws or have any emission testing for our vehicles, this is not needed for where I'm at. But as always, double check with your state laws. For example, if you're in California, don't do this. Your car will get state refed, you're going to have to spend a lot of money. Not worth it. But this is going to clear up a lot of room in our engine bay, and it's going to make everything look a lot nicer. So let's get this pulled out, and I'll pull it over onto the bench, and I'll show you pretty much how it works. Alright, so here's pretty much the setup outside of the car. So with your factory fuel, your factory hard lines that run underneath the intake manifold, I'm not running those anymore. I have a whole custom Torque Solutions kit for a fuel system. But here's how it works. The top one right here, that's your feed. You can tell because it's bigger than the rest. Your feed comes in, feeds the fuel rails. This one down here is your return line. It's smaller than the rest. And it sits underneath. This is where your factory fuel dampers would go and fuel pressure regulator. But this middle line right here, this is your EVAP line. So it comes from the factory hard line. This is the soft line in between the hard line and hard line. So it runs through here into your EVAP system. So it comes in your EVAP system at the T, and that's what connects your top and your bottom solenoids. And then at the top solenoid, the bottom port, this is what goes to your intake. And then the top port on the bottom solenoid, this is what goes to your intake manifold. Very simple setup, just looks confusing when it's in the car because it's just a rat's nest of vacuum lines. If you do end up deleting this, you need to get an open source tune for your car because you will throw EVAP codes without having these two connectors plugged in. I already had EVAP codes because this thing was acting ridiculous already. So now that we have this pulled out, let's go take a look at the engine bay and see how much room it cleared up. So you're going to be left with two connectors that need to be taped up and tucked away. And you're going to need to block off this vacuum port on your intake manifold and then this vacuum port on your intake. I believe that in this mess of parts somewhere, I have a 1/4 inch NPT fitting or block. I have a 1/4 inch NPT plug that I can put in here. This, I'm going to need to get like a vacuum nipple pretty much and get that sealed shut so there's no vacuum leaks there. But this clears up so much room, and especially when you put your shroud on, you don't have a rat's nest of stuff sitting in that corner anymore. We need to figure out where we should run this line. We're just going to vent that to atmosphere, and I'm probably going to do it in the fender well somewhere. Alright, that's what we came up with. We're just pulling off the hard line and then following the fuse box around and bringing it down and popping it out right on the fender well. So it'll vent pretty much out right here, just down to the ground. So I'm going to grab some electrical tape and I'm going to tape up these connectors and get them out of the way. Which it doesn't really matter because these are absolutely destroyed anyways from the previous owner. Both of these clips are just absolutely messed up. So just to keep corrosion out of the actual wire, I'm going to get those taped up, shove them underneath the manifold, and we should be good to go there. With the amount of space that frees up, in the wise words of Smedia, you can now fist your engine. But that's a wonderful, wonderful thing if you want your car to run at least a little healthier, not get all that EVAP from the gas tank going back into your intake. So I did end up finding, I think it's a 3/8 NPT fitting. It's a 3/8 NPT plug. So we're going to take out this vacuum line and replace it with this. These are the ones that come with the Killer Bee inlet and they're plastic. So if you do end up getting this, don't over tighten these. We're going to use some of this Permatex thread sealant to be able to seal up these threads so that there is no vacuum leak from deleting this whole EVAP system. Here's another little tip that I just thought of, and I just knocked it out without even thinking about filming it. But when you install your alternator shroud, your little cover, the one on the left that's attached to the power steering pump is threaded, and the one that's on the right that goes in here is not threaded. It uses this bolt and a nut. I just took a rib nut and had like a washer on the back and then just sandwiched them together. So now we have a place to screw it in instead of finagling the nut on the back of that because it's always a pain in the butt. So that's going to be nice. Let's go ahead and throw this alternator cover back on, and then we'll get a look at how much space we freed up. yeah, as you can see, deleting that EVAP solenoid gives you so much more room. I do know on the newer STIs, like the 15 Plus, they have the boost controller goes up here, but with the GD chassis, the Grimspeed kit or the Cobb kit, pretty much all kits are the same, but they're sitting back here right in front of the strut tower, so really cleans up the bay a lot. Now the last thing that needs to happen is we need to get an AOS and get rid of this line crossing up top, and then we'll be pretty much solid on the engine bay. I just had a thought too, to be able to clean this up even more. This is my vacuum reference for my fuel pressure regulator. Now I can run it to this one, and then we can block this one off. Also, in doing so, I found that it is absolutely loose, so that could be a vacuum leak, or we know it is a vacuum leak now. So let's get the fuel pressure regulator plumbed up to this vacuum reference, and then get that one plugged off, and then we'll be good to go. Alright, so I just made like a little vacuum nipple. Took a piece of, I don't know, what, like 1/8 inch vacuum line to fit on that tiny little nub right there. And then had a vacuum nipple that was a little too big, shoved it around the actual vacuum line. It was a super tight fit, and then I heat shrinked around it so that there's no air to be found at all. And we're just going to shove this guy on here and give it a zip tie, and we will be good to go. Alright, so that's how it is routed now. The fuel pressure regulator is going to get its vacuum reference from the old EVAP vacuum reference, and that means we can block off this vacuum port here. Also, one of the massive perks about running speed density is you don't have to worry about vacuum lines as much for a lot of different things. You just have to make sure that all of your vacuum ports are plugged. But like I said, the only two vacuum ports you need to plug up when doing this delete is going to be the one on the intake and then the one on the intake manifold. I'll link down in the description box below a vacuum line nipple kit that you can buy for pretty cheap if you're going to be doing this and deleting some other vacuum lines. So I'll link that down below, and you can check that out and buy it if you want to. Or you could probably just go to your local AutoZone or O'Reilly's and find one there. But all in all, that's all that's required for deleting the EVAP system. Other than deleting the charcoal canister in the back, which you have to drop the tank for. We're not going to do that right now. We're just doing the front half delete, and I'm going to save that for another day when we go ahead and drop it for a different tank. But if you saw my last video, you noticed that this car wasn't running amazing. I think this had a partial reason to do with it. I also need to double check the wastegate and make sure everything is good there. There's like a weird whining sound that we're going to have to figure out, but we'll troubleshoot that at a different time. That'll be a whole separate video. I hope that this kind of helped you out if you're looking for a detailed video on how this is supposed to go together and how that EVAP system works and what lines need to go where. Again, super simple. It just looks complicated. But we are on the first revision of this tune. If you do end up doing this, make sure you let your tuner know so that he can adjust for it, or else you are going to have lights on the dash. And your car could run a little weird depending on your EVAP system, I guess. But I think that's where I'm going to wrap it up right here. Just a quick little video showing you how to delete this EVAP system. And again, double check with your state laws and your emission laws within the state that you're in and see if you are able to do this. It's frowned upon everywhere. Different states have different emission requirements, and some states have to get tested. I know New Jersey does, New York, California. If you're going to do this, just check with your state. Down here in Florida, we have nothing like that, so we're good to go. We're in the green. But I'm ready to get this thing back on the road and get it driving. It's been a long time. One step at a time. We did get the first drive out of the way and found some other issues that we're going to have to fix. There's a little bit of a coolant leak on the top of the block. Don't know where that's coming from, but we're going to get it figured out. With that being said, I'm going to wrap it up right here. I appreciate everybody watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. See ya.